Okay. 30 minutes it's a now problem because
I think the next half an hour or so, let me briefly go through the second wave and virus related issues, and also touch predominantly upon the vaccination, and also give you a few tips how to cope up with the illness and the current lockdown state. So COVID-19 second wave, it is real and it is there. It is hitting us hard. So contrary to lot of WhatsApp posts and social media circulation, it is not a media hype. And I would reiterate here that it is not a conspiracy between people who are testing, pharma and hospitals. They are making money during this COVID. There is no doubt about it. During any process, if there is a war, the industry which deals with weapons makes money. After the war, when the reconstruction starts, construction industries and service providers make a profit. This is part and parcel of human life. But doctors and medical fraternity also getting hit, and we have lost a lot of doctors during the first wave and the second wave. The current strains, we are all bombarded with the information about new mutants, Indian mutant, UK variant, Andhra variant, etc. Current strains have become more infective, but they are not necessarily more lethal, because we are seeing more deaths here now because more number of people are affected. What is a mutation? Say virus, when they replicate, every time they get into our body, they keep replicating. When they replicate, it won't become the same copy of itself every time. Over time, it gets slightly modified. And some of them can become very lethal, like MERS, Middle Eastern SARS-CoV infection, which happened a few years ago, which killed almost 35% of the people who got affected. But because it is very lethal, the isolation process virtually ended the epidemic, and along with the death of the participants. So current strains are more infective. The more infective strains survive, the more lethal strains don't survive for a long term. So what can we do to fight this wave? COVID appropriate behavior is the most important number one measure to overcome this illness. And social distancing, mask, hand sanitation. I won't stress more on this. Only my advice is to wear the mask properly, and don't touch the face and mask frequently, though our hand keeps going to the face without us realizing. And don't pull down the mask when you are talking to anybody, particularly when you are talking to somebody in close quarters. The simple 5 rupee surgical mask seem to be the best available mask, which you can use it for a day or two and discard and buy again and use it. And other measure to help us in fighting this wave is to test when we have symptoms, particularly fever, upper respiratory symptoms like sore throat, loss of taste, and body pains, cough. These symptoms are very common symptoms which can occur with any viral infections or allergy. So don't think that it is probably an allergy. This is the same infection I had 2 years back, and not test it, because at this moment, if you have upper respiratory symptoms and cough and body pain and fever, it is COVID unless otherwise proved, and get the RT-PCR done as early as possible. Because the delay, if you check it after 8 days, it may turn negative, and if you worsen at this point, and the diagnosis treatment becomes difficult, because still a lot of hospitals insist on a COVID positive test for admission, etc. And I have to tell you that a lot of people feel ashamed to tell that they had COVID. So positive COVID test is not a shame or a slur on your character. It is not like having an HIV positive. At least you can feel ashamed that probably this was due to some behavior which is not socially acceptable. So it is our duty to rest and self-isolate to curtail the spread of virus. The virus does not move. only it moves along with the human beings. So we are the vehicle for the virus to move from one place to another. So if you suspect that you have a disease, isolate yourself and be at home. And once when you recover, and the virus dies with that process, and it does not have an opportunity to get into another human being. And COVID appropriate behavior is again important. I will not dwell on it, you all know. So avoid crowded places. But we are social beings. Being socializing definitely has positive effect on the immune system and psychological well-being. But once the lockdown is over, we can socialize with our friends. We can have a walking tour. We can walk with our friend. You can socialize in parks, but avoid hotels and very particularly closed ones. Open air is okay, and make sure that the social distancing is maintained between two groups of people. And travel only if necessary, and avoid aeroplanes and air-conditioned buses, particularly when the disease is at its peak. What are the other measures? Probably after the self-isolation and lockdown, probably the vaccination is the most important measure to fight this virus. So vaccinate yourself and everyone around you. Please be a vaccine advocate and make sure that everyone surrounding you is vaccinated if and when the vaccination is available to that age population. I'll tell you what is a vaccination. Lot of people don't know what is this vaccine business. What happens when a bacteria or a virus enters into the human body? It causes infection. Either it is an invasive disease, or sometimes some of the bacteria like tetanus and botulinum and some of the staphylococcus produce a toxin which causes illness. So body tries to resist it. Our immune system produces antibodies and T cell immune response, and we recover, and we have protection against the same infection for at least few months. Some of the infections produce lifelong immunity, like measles. If you got measles once, you will not get measles again. But if you get a simple virus illness, within 2-3 months we become vulnerable again, because these viruses keep mutating and body cannot recognize a new mutant. So what is done with a vaccine? Vaccines, we are trying to fool the immune system that there is an infection going on. So we know by research that which part of the virus elicits an immune response, and whether that immune response is protective or not. So people have studied this in the lab, and they now fairly know that spike protein is one of the protein against which body produces antibodies, and that antibodies seem to be protective. So what people have done is either in a inactivated virus, the common cold virus, or through mRNA or inactivated virus, they try to send only the antigens which are recognized by the immune system as enemy, sugar coat it with some other carrier material and send it into the body. And some adjuvants are something which stimulates the immune system. It is also added, so that immune system recognizes this antigen and mounts an immune response, and there are antibodies present. So when the second time you get an infection, body has seen it before and can quickly mount an immune response to clear the viruses fast. It may not prevent you from getting infected, but it helps you to heal from it better. The slide here also shows nicely that this is a pink color stuff is a muscle. So you have put a needle into the muscle and put some vaccine material, which are taken up by the scavenger cells, which are there in the tissues. They digest the protein and presents it to lymphocytes, which are immune cells. That helper lymphocytes stimulates the B cells, which are the production factory for antibodies. They turn into plasma cells and produce antibodies, which are the anti-spike protein antibodies, which happens in COVID's case. And some of the B cells go into a memory B cell state, and they circulate around looking for infection. So moment infection is noticed, they immediately mount a response. So the normally for body to produce adequate antibodies, it will take at least 10 days, probably 2 weeks, 3 weeks to produce maximum amount of antibody. And that much of time is not enough if a new infection comes. So because of the memory cells, when you get the infection, within few days, body is able to produce adequate antibodies and help you to heal faster. So these are the few vaccines available in India and the world. So we use Oxford University AstraZeneca vaccine, which is available as Covishield, which is produced by Serum Institute in Pune. And Pfizer and Moderna vaccine are available in US and Europe. And Novavax is still being in trial stage. Janssen also is in a trial mode. In India, we have Bharat Biotech. What are the differences in these vaccines? So in Oxford, or Covishield uses a chimpanzee adenovirus, adenovirus which commonly affects the chimp monkeys. They inactivate the virus, and they now have the technology to put the COVID spike protein into that virus and inject it into the human beings. So the macrophages or scavenger cells pick up this and takes it to the lymph nodes, where the immune system further processes it and produces the immune cascade, which ultimately leads to antibody production. These viruses are inactivated virus. They will not replicate. So you don't get an infection. The Pfizer and Moderna uses a totally different new, once the first time in the world kind of technology. They used something called mRNA to use as a vehicle to take the viral protein into the body. And Bharat Biotech uses Sputnik, also uses inactivated virus, which is very similar to Covishield. But probably Sputnik, the dose 1 and dose 2 have a slightly two different vehicles. It's not the same. So that's the reason probably Sputnik claim to have a slightly higher efficacy rate. And Bharat Biotech uses a dead virus, dead coronavirus. Dead coronavirus is killed by radiation or a chemical or various other heat. So they are viruses, dead virus, which carries all the paraphernalia. They are injected into the body, and body recognizes it as an infection and produces antibody. So, and I'll also let me discuss this slide about the efficacy, and you hear from the news channels and newspapers that Pfizer is 90% effective, Covishield is 80% effective, etc. What does it mean? What does it mean? So when they check after in a trial, they give vaccine for say 1,000 people, they give vaccine. Another 1,000 people, they give placebo vaccine. That is something like a simple distilled water injection. And at the end of 2 months, during a pandemic period, they open the trial and see how many people who have received Covishield have got vaccine, or Covaxin have developed a disease, and how many people who have received the distilled water, that's a placebo, developed a disease. So in the first example, Bharat Biotech, in the population, I don't know the exact denominator, maybe 1,000 people who have infected, 43 people developed COVID. 36 people who received placebo developed COVID. Only 7 who received Covaxin developed COVID. So they calculated statistics that it reduces the chance of getting COVID by 80%. This is similarly, it is 95% for Moderna and around 80% for our Covishield, around 80% for Bharat Biotech's Covaxin, and about 90% for our Sputnik vaccine. So this percent, whether really it matters when you give it in a large scale, is still not known. So probably a Covishield or a Sputnik should, in a population level, should produce adequate immune response to protect people. So there is no big difference between the vaccines, though head-to-head studies have never been done, probably will never be done also. So what are the common side effects? People are very worried about side effects. It is like an infection. We are imitating or mimicking a viral infection by giving the vaccine. So you can get all the symptoms which can occur with a viral illness. We have all experienced common flu, cold, cough. We have been unwell for a few days, taken off from work, headaches, pain and swelling at the site of the injection, mild fever, irritability. I felt very sleepy after the vaccine for 24 to 48 hours. So these are the common side effects which generally go away within 2-3 days. Again, depends upon the individuals. Some people don't get anything, which is similar to people who are exposed to virus. They feel little lethargic for a day, next day they are fine. But some people feel ill for a week. So human beings are different, our immune systems are different, way our body reacts to this vaccine also will be slightly different. And even if you have developed some mild symptoms, you can still take the second dose of vaccine. You may still get a similar symptoms, or sometimes may not get a symptom, and that should not deter us from taking the second vaccine. Only reason we should not take the second vaccine is if you have developed severe anaphylactic reaction to the first dose, and your doctor says that next time don't take the second vaccine, then don't take. Even one dose of vaccine will give you a reasonable amount of protection. So vaccine hesitancy, a lot of people for right reasons sometimes are hesitant to take vaccine, which has resulted in significant amount of vaccine uptake in many countries. So conspiracy theories, so many things can lead to vaccine hesitancy and reduce the uptake. Even during our January to March vaccination drive, about 30 to 40% of the vaccine doses were wasted because they have opened the centers, nobody went because of the information circulating around talking about the side effects rather than the good effects of vaccine. They have systematically studied, there are scientific articles about this, like the title COVID-19 Vaccine Rumors and Conspiracy Theories, the need for cognitive inoculation against misinformation. So we need a vaccine against misinformation to improve vaccine adherence. So if you read these small prints, they have found during a study period, somewhere in the last year they have done that. 63 items they could find from the social media. Only 5% of them were found to be true. And whooping 83% of the information was false. And 10% were definitely misleading. And another 2% were exaggerated, like the side effects are exaggerated out of proportion. So they have concluded that this misinformation has to be tackled for a more successful vaccine program. There are quite a few myths in the community. People say natural immunity is better than vaccine acquired immunity. It's 100% true. No vaccine can mimic a natural infection. I'll give you a couple of examples. If a child gets measles, and it gives much more robust immunity against second attack of measles, but the risk is 1 in 500 children can die of measles. So vaccine death is virtually nil. Almost, if you calculate it, it will be 1 in a few millions, 1 in 10 million. That it is that rate. So definitely, vaccine scores over allowing the natural infection to occur and then get the immunity. It is same for COVID also. If you get COVID infection, we have at least 1% risk of dying, which may vary between the age group. The 18-year-old guy probably will have maybe 0.0001% of dying of the disease. For a 70-year-old person may have maybe 10% risk of dying. So, but in a population level, you have at least 1% risk of dying of the disease, but vaccine the risk is pretty low. So this myth is has to be definitely explained to the people. And people feel that vaccines are not worth the risk. Why should I take? Why should I stand in a queue and take? But it is definitely worth the risk because during this pandemic, it is our duty to reduce the progression, and along with lockdown, along with social isolation, along with using a mask, vaccine is a very important strategy to break the cycle and bring back the economy. We can't be selfish. I'll be isolating myself, I don't want to take. But we need to think about the entire country and the entire world's health. And another popular myth was vaccine can cause disease which it is trying to prevent, which is not true. No vaccine will produce a disease which it is going to prevent. It can cause milder version of the disease, which is due to the inert material and the body's immune response rather than disease per se. If you are getting a disease after the first vaccine, it is due to probably our carelessness, and we would have gotten infection either from the COVID injection centers or from our surroundings, or we might have become little more complacent because I have taken a vaccine, I can go around everywhere. And the next myth is herd immunity. India thought that India has developed a herd immunity. Around January, February, politicians have started talking about herd immunity. 30% of the Delhi population had antibodies against virus. They thought probably India's conquered virus. That's why many scientists, including scientists and politicians, politicians probably took cues from the scientists. They thought that India's COVID war is won. So that led to the complacency. The virus was probably much more tricky than us, and definitely outwitted us. That is the reason the entire government machinery is found itself wrong-footed on this. Though their intention was to do good, but they found themselves wrong-footed and started congratulating themselves prematurely. And vaccine side effects, I've already told you. The vaccine's risk of developing a major side effect is at least 1 in 1 lakh and above. So vaccine has got mild side effects. Yes, almost everybody gets, 70% of people can get mild side effects, but it doesn't amount to serious side effects. And quite a few conspiracy theories which are running around in the internet. The one I found most interesting is coronavirus pandemic is a cover for a plan to implant trackable microchips, and Microsoft co-founder Bill Gates is behind it. In a survey in US, about 20 to 28% of the people believed it, and more Republicans believed it. Almost 40% of the people, Republicans, believed it. So a recent post on a UK-based Twitter account said Bill Gates himself has admitted that vaccine will no doubt kill 70% of the people. This is cherry picking of his statement. He told that his statement was something like that. He told that 1 in 10,000 people may develop a moderate side effect. And that would mean that 7 lakh people in the world, if the entire population of the world is vaccinated, 7 lakh people may have moderate side effects. So which is relatively a small number. So that is what he told, but it was misinterpreted or purposefully interpreted as it will kill 7 lakh people. The another hoax is another conspiracy theory is this entire pandemic is a hoax, and a very successful one for pharma. So that is invented pandemic theory. I don't think this is in any way near the truth. There is always a conspiracy theory. People still are doubting whether Armstrong has landed in moon. So there's a conspiracy theories are still popular. There are always people who believe this kind of theories. And why do people refuse vaccines? Fear of side effects, which we have already told. Vaccine can cause blood clots. Europe did stop Covishield vaccination because of the reports of blood clots. This is because when you are taking a vaccine, you are generally hyper vigilant. Any problems are noticed, any problems are reported. There is a vaccine reporting system which is very robust in Europe and US. So quite a bit of 30-40 patients of blood clots were reported, so they have stopped. Then they reanalyze the data. For the same period, the previous year, when there was no COVID, there were more blood clots in the community than during the COVID vaccination period. Actually, if you interpret this epidemiology and statistics, vaccine actually protected against blood clots. So that is why they reopened the vaccine, and it is probably given in Europe on a regular basis. Very rarely, like COVID infection itself can cause blood clots, and the risk of blood clots with the COVID infection is much higher than the potential chance of a blood clot which can occur because of the vaccine. And vaccine can cause COVID, which we have addressed, probably doesn't. And lot of information came out in newspapers. People who blood thinner should not take vaccine. So that is because of the injection fear, because they are on blood thinner, if they take an injection, it can cause a bleeding. So this is not true, because people who are on blood thinner routinely take flu vaccines and other vaccines. People who are, many a times, people have the vaccinators from a primary health centers, nurses have told the patients to stop their blood thinners. If they are post bypass surgery, or if you are on a valve replacement surgery, if they have had atrial fibrillation, if they had a stroke, many people have stopped their blood thinners and taken the vaccine. And probably that may be the reason we have got few strokes and heart attacks after the vaccine. And in other countries where people don't do this, they have not shown any increase in risk of heart attacks, etc. And immunosuppressive patients should not take. That is also, the myth is already very popular. Immunosuppressive peoples may not mount adequate immune response to the vaccine. So there is a recommendation from Rheumatology Society, Nephrology Society, and various other specialists who transplant people. There is a recommendation to stop some of the immunosuppressives for 1 or 2 weeks after the vaccination, provided their original disease allows it. If you have a transplant patient, stopping immunosuppression means kidney rejection. So they will not stop. If they will get vaccinated, they may or may not get adequate protection. That is a caveat. Presence of comorbidities. Also, people think that I have a lot of disease, doctor, can I take? People who have a lot of disease, you should take. Other reasons why people don't take is religious, cultural, and political beliefs. A lot of cults refuse vaccines. Every religion has some small group of cult. They are against vaccine. They see it as a conspiracy against God, or they see this disease as God's punishment. We have to suffer. So there are quite a few philosophies which may prevent vaccine uptake. And of course, the most common reason seem to be WhatsApp tells that it is harmful, internet tells, my Twitter friend told that it is harmful. That seems to be the most common cause. Is vaccine new things? Most of people probably hear about vaccine relatively recently. It is not a new thing. It started hundreds of years with Edward Jenner vaccinating against smallpox. We all vaccinate our children very routinely. Children do get side effects. We all know that after vaccination, our kids will be cranky for a day or two. So all the issues raised today apply to these vaccines as well. Still, we vaccinated our children. There is a small group all over the world which is against vaccine or against the way the vaccination schedule is given. That is a point for debate. There is a school that we should not give all the vaccines together for a young kid, and we should give it at a phased manner. So that is a debate for science. At this moment, we all vaccinate our kids. Because of that, many diseases have almost gone. We don't know what smallpox is, because many eradication of the disease has led to disappearance of certain diseases from our collective public memory. Maybe 100 years back, our grandparents' time, Amma or smallpox was the Mari. It was supposed to be the most feared disease. All of us knew about it. But the current generation, we don't know. If a real smallpox comes back, many of the doctors have not seen one probably we might miss many before again people realize that smallpox has come back. Like similarly, polio is almost eradicated by vaccine, and except for a few pockets in Afghanistan and Pakistan, polio is almost gone thanks to effort from the world and Rotary. And adult flu vaccine is also quite popular and routine in many countries. We also vaccinate our adults, elderly, if they have rheumatic disease, if they are on immunomodulating drugs. And is there any evidence that vaccination is successful? Particularly in UK, after vaccination drive, after they have vaccinated at least 50 to 60% of the population with at least one dose, hospitalization for severe COVID has come down drastically. And there was a 70% reduction of new COVID cases after vaccination campaign. So two factors probably played with the towards that success is probably lockdown and also extensive and effective vaccination strategy. They are small countries. They are able to do it much more easily. We are a massive country. We are struggling. Though we have vaccinated technically, numerically more people than in most of the countries. So even though the vaccines may not prevent an infection, it definitely prevents serious illness and saves lives. So my last few slides, why vaccination is the solution. Economy has to start. All the industries have to start, including your construction and infrastructure in industries. Any industry, probably medical, infrastructure, service providers, everybody has to get back to work to earn our salaries. Otherwise, we will not get our salaries and we will plunge into poverty. Lockdown is an effective strategy, but it is not a sustainable strategy. So vaccination gives one a little bit of courage to go out and join workforce and serve towards the recovery of economy. In the absence of a curative drug, vaccination is probably the best solution. It is more effective when combined with COVID appropriate behavior. So vaccination is not a ticket for us to go and party tomorrow in a pub or have a friend's party in a closed room. So the virus can be tricky. So at this moment, this seems to be the best solution. And if we follow it and we vaccinate maximum, hopefully this disease will slowly die out. And we have to combine it with COVID appropriate behavior, which we had already touched upon. So the most important factors to prevent getting infection as an individual level is to have practice COVID appropriate behavior, vaccinate, and getting fit, avoid smoking, limit alcohol, avoid very vigorous exercises. Gentle exercise is immunoprotective, very vigorous exercise can be immunosuppressive. Balanced diet, eating more vegetables, fiber-rich food, improving the gut bacteria will help us to protect against the severity of the diseases. There is no magic bullet supplement. So we are seeing these images in the TV every day. We have lost quite a few celebrities in the last 1 year. Many of them are due to COVID, including our ex-president, SP Balasubramaniam, Chetan Chauhan, etc. And these images can be very scary and can stress out. And there is a huge increase in the amount of people seeking clinical psychologist help in the community. Most of the clinical psychologists who were relatively free, they are all overbooked now and pretty difficult to get their opinion. And this is due to COVID-related stress. There are two things, extrinsic factors, which we cannot control. There are viral factors, this mutation, that mutation. The press TV presenters are very excited about telling this. But we don't have a control over it except for COVID appropriate behavior. Human behavior, we all worry about how many people are coming out for this election rally, how many people are come for this religious festival, that religious festival, we blame this religion, we blame another religion next day. But that we don't have a control. Super spreader events, we don't have a control. Daily viral numbers, curves keep going up and down. No hospital beds, no oxygen, no drugs, no vaccine. We don't have a control over this. But all these things can produce severe stress, and stress inactivates many genes. More than 100 genes are inactivated temporarily by stress. Many of the inactivated genes are protective ones, good ones. Why? Because body thinks that I am at war. I have to run away from this tiger. I have to save myself from this dangerous situation. All the other gentle things are shut, and body focuses only on running away, getting out of this. But when there is a chronic stress, still body behaves same way. All the protective healing mechanism can be off, and if we get infection during this time, it can cause a much more prolonged and much more severe infections. So there are few things which we can control. How we can maintain equanimity, calmness during the period of stress. That's what equanimity means. Like a Buddhist principle, attached detachment. Do your duty, do whatever you need to do to take care of people, relatives, but don't get too stressed about what's happening around you. Accept the reality and adapt to it. No, I have to do this only. I have to go and see the doctor personally. Otherwise, I can't. I don't have the rapport. Sometimes we have to do online consultations with your doctors, or do a Zoom call and talk to your friend rather than take a stupid decision to go out and mingle and get the disease. We can improve our fitness. We can become a better version of ourselves. There are a lot of online fitness classes. You can exercise with the family. You can get the kids introduced to exercise and fitness. But my advice would be not to run a marathon or do 5K, 10K, 20K kind of exercises, because strenuous exercises is immunosuppressive. If you do a very strenuous exercise today and in the evening go to a place where you get exposed to infection, you are more likely to catch it. And gentle exercise definitely provides protection against infections. Another important factor is sleep. Try to sleep 7 to 8 hours of the day. Sleep is immunoprotective. It restores the immune system. The best sleep we get is between 10 to 2 a.m. During COVID, most of us sleep late, sleep at 4 o'clock and get up at 12 o'clock in the morning. That sleep may not be very restorative. We would sleep, yes, but not very restorative. Try to sleep during the time which we are supposed to, were designed as a human beings from time memorial to sleep. So anywhere between say 9:30, 10 to 2 a.m. we should get the best sleep. So sleep improves the immunity and healing. And if you are working from home, create a workstation. Don't work from the bed. Bed is not your office. And give space to your spouse and kids. Particularly women are getting very stressed because they are not used to having their kids and husband all the time at home. They had their time, they had their separate time so that they can do whatever they want. When the spouse and kids are always around, that has resulted in a significant increase in the stress in women particularly. And of course, it can happen other way around as well. Better to share the responsibility with your spouse, develop new hobbies, catch up on your movies, but comedies are always good for health because laughing out loud activates at least 40 to 50 genes which are protective. It activates the ability of the virus, our immune cells to fight the virus better. It heals a wound better. And catch up with your friends on a Zoom call or a WhatsApp call. Walk and get-togethers in park and open spaces. We have to survive this pandemic. We are all in survival mode. So we use all our strategies, including lockdowns, social isolation, masking, sanitization, and vaccination is an effective strategy towards doing this. And my recommendation also is to help less privileged in and around our neighborhood and those who are working for us, particularly our drivers, our mates. We somehow can survive. We may have reserve to survive, but these people are and live on a very meager reserve, and this pandemic lockdowns and other stuff can really break their neck. and we should pay them. We should try to help them as much as possible. With this, I think I will stop here and open to questions.
Thanks a lot, Doctor. I think wonderful session. I think it cleared most of our points. I think we have been bombarded with a lot of news from the internet, as you said. I think your presentation made it crisp and clear. I think wonderful. I should really thank you and on behalf of ISHRE for sparing your time from your busy schedule and kind of making it a presentation to the point. I think wonderful and heartfelt gratitude from all of us, sir. Thank you very much. I think a couple of good points you shared. Don't be shy away to, if you're a COVID positive, and be a vaccine advocate. I think rightly said, what is the vaccination and few of technical points of how the vaccination works. I think very nice information, and you did bust all the myths what we were having in our mind. I think also very important what I saw in the last slide, be a better version of oneself, exercise with family, share the responsibility with your spouse, very important, and sleep and laugh. I think very nice points to hear that. We'll get into the questions. I think we have a lot of questions in the chat box. I'll just quickly read out the questions. So first question is, in RT-PCR test, what is CT value under which it is confirmed that it is COVID to start treatment / isolation? And what is the CT value over which we can assume safety that it's not infectious now to come out of isolation? Doctor?
Yes, this is a very good question. The CT value, the lower the CT value, it detects how fast the RT-PCR test becomes positive. That's what it tries to, how within RT-PCR they put the genetic material into a medium where there is a something which stimulates the DNA to replicate itself. That's a starter, something like a starter thing which is there. So the moment that it sees the gene, it goes attached to that gene and starts replicating. So they have to use 1 or 2 cycles. So lesser number of CT value, that means the viral load is higher.
Okay.
Right, that's what it means. But nowadays, the ICMR has advised not to give CT values, and CT values can be very misleading. It doesn't tell us that you have a mild COVID or a serious COVID, and you can say if you have a high value, oh, I'm going to have a mild disease. I have a severe value. When I had COVID, my CT value was very low. I am supposed to have a very viral load, but I did come out without much hiccups. People who had higher value had ended in ICU. So my advice is not to look at the CT value. If it is positive, and go by your symptoms, and you are relatively asymptomatic, wait and watch. If you are feeling unwell, you need more tests and have to see a fever clinic doctor. And whether you need RT-PCR test to say that you are cured, no. After 7 to 8 days, maximum 10 days, most of the people who are positive will become less non-infective. After 10 days, is extremely unlikely for you to infect others. RT-PCR can still come positive for 2 weeks. See, if you look at the newspaper today, the 2 guys, Chennai players, Vridhiman Saha continues to test positive because they need a negative test to travel. The other guy has tested negative, but Vridhiman Saha is not infective. It's a dead virus which is coming out of his nose. So people can shed dead virus for up to 2 weeks. So somebody is 10 days, even for health professionals, if they test positive and if they don't have fever for consecutively for 3 days, after 10th day, they can go back and to start working. They don't need to do a second RT-PCR test to go back to work. If it is true for health workers, it must be true for everybody, because health workers are, again, we are exposing ourselves to a lot of people.
Okay.
We should not go and infect others. So there is no need to repeatedly doing, except for certain industries, some norms. If you are traveling, you have to have a negative certificate. If you are going to join a university, you have to then you have to do second time and get a negative certificate, which may take usually anywhere between 10 to 3 weeks for it to become negative in the nose. But after 10 days, you are not going to be infective.
Okay. Thanks, doctor, for sharing those insights. We have another question. I think we have plenty of questions. I'll read out the next question. It's a personal question. I think my son's flatmate has diarrhea for a day on 8th May and got RT-PCR CT value of 30. On 9th May, sample and my son got RT-PCR negative on sample dated 11th of May. We have put our son in isolation, although had no symptoms at all. Is it correct to put him in isolation? If yes, then how many days taking Limsi 1000 zinc 50 since 11th? Doctor?
So this is difficult to answer. There is no right word here, right answer here. If the person is exposed to somebody who is positive, it is not a bad idea to isolate for at least a week, so that sometimes the RT-PCR may be negative on the day 1, it can become positive on the day 3 or day 4. So to prevent him from infecting others, it may not be a bad idea to isolate if it is possible. If the boy is of an age where isolation is possible, if it's too small a kid, we cannot isolate.
Right.
Another way is, if the kid cannot be isolated, the parents can wear a mask.
Correct.
So when they are interacting with them for another maximum 1 week, then get out of it. But if RT-PCR is negative, and then you are negative, and then you are not, then there's strictly no need to isolate. But if you have a very strong exposure, it may be a good idea to isolate yourself for 4 or 5 days to see whether you get symptoms or not, up to a week.
Okay. Thanks, doctor. I think one question I had in my mind on the vaccination. I think we spoke on all getting vaccinated. Can like children, we saw that it's not right time to get vaccinated in your slide. Can pregnant women get vaccinated? Because we keep hearing no, not right now. Some say yes. Your views, doctor, on that?
Yeah. So this pregnant women question is always very delicate and very complex, because none of the studies have included women who are pregnant.
Okay.
Right. And so no manufacturer will say this is safe for pregnancy, because they have not done the study.
Right.
But usually the pregnancy story comes after the exposure, after the marketing. And recently I saw a few reports from US, where people who have taken Moderna vaccine and Pfizer vaccine, and UK, and quite a bit of women have become pregnant, and they seem to be okay, and there is no adverse effects, and probably almost all vaccines we give it to women who are pregnant, particularly flu vaccine. So extrapolating that, the vaccine could be safe, but your gynecologist will be little sketchy with this. So they may not say, if you want, you take, otherwise, because they can't commit. Then after that, if something happens, you will go and blame them or sue them. So that fear is always there. But I think pregnant women should take.
Okay, thanks, doctor, for this input.
Including lactating women.
Okay, that's nice. One more question we have: which mask is best? Is it N95, cloth, surgical? Is it required to wear double mask? I guess you stretched on that. I think one question we have: double mask, is it better?
Yeah, see, it depends on your exposure level. If you are going for a walk in a park, probably you don't need a mask theoretically. Okay. But police will catch. So we have to use a simplest possible mask which allows you to breathe.
Correct.
But if you are going to a work environment where you are going to interact with a lot of people, wear the surgical mask which I showed you, and the blue color mask which every surgeon, hospital people wear. Probably that gives you the best protection.
Okay.
And you can wear another cloth mask over it. It gives you double masking. And N95 should be reserved for people who are working medical professionals, who are more likely to get exposed to the COVID patients.
Thanks, doctor. One more question, sir. Will COVID virus spread through air?
Again, there are few reports of late.
Right.
Again, so it's not very substantiated. Spreading through toilet route, toilet like flushing system, aerosol. It does stay in the air for some time, right? After somebody coughs or sneezes, it remains in the air for some time.
Right.
And but the most of the time it settles down. So it's not like somebody was there in room 1 hour before, you go to that room, virus is going to be in the air, or virus is going to be in the road if somebody has walked past. That much of airborne it is not.
Okay.
But if it is a closed environment, like it's a closed environment, room is closed, the 10 friends are sitting and talking, right? So it can probably linger on into that room, particularly if it is air conditioned for some more time, and it can infect more people in the next few hours. After that, it will settle down. And the viral load also is very important.
Okay.
In an airborne, say I assume that I'm walking in the road, I have a COVID, I coughed 2 or 3 times. Definitely some virus will go out if I'm not wearing the mask. But it will diluted by the environment. That guy who is passing by may get a very tiny dose of virus going into his body that may not be enough to infect him. But a much more closer contact, like if I'm sitting and talking with a friend, or I'm seeing a patient, I'm examining them, talking to them, his mask is not right, my mask is not right. I'm likely to get a large viral load getting into my body. That is where we are going to get more severe disease. The viral load important. So we don't too scared of open spaces. You can walk in the road. You can walk in your walking areas, and corridors are okay. And close to rooms, air-conditioned rooms, maybe there may be a small chance that the virus can linger. And if so many people were there, 10 guys with a COVID were there in the room, and they would leave enough virus, then guy goes in after that might get. That chances are very low.
Okay. Thanks, doctor, for sharing your experience and inputs on that. We have one more question. If one has got the first dose of vaccination and then been infected with COVID, what is the advisable time frame to get the second dose?
Yes, this is a very practical question, because that's happening quite a bit. After you have taken the first vaccine, the COVID infection which you are getting is like a nature's vaccine schedule. Nature has already given you a vaccine, original illness. This is a duplicate. This is original, right? So you got the virus itself that will again stimulate the immune system. And because you're already exposed to the virus, you are likely to develop a milder form of disease. And so immune system will be robust for a few months. So you can schedule your second dose maybe 8 weeks later.
8 weeks later. Okay.
8 weeks later.
Is it vaccine specific, doctor, or any vaccine, whatever we take?
Any vaccine. You can schedule a little later.
Nice. Thanks, doctor.
Go to the outermost level where the government allows you to take, because sometimes you need a certificate. I don't know whether if you take it little later, whether government will give a certificate or not. I'm not sure. Completion certificate. Right? But if you have taken one vaccine for any reasons, either because you have got a COVID or some other reasons, you are not able to take the second dose, even if you take it within 1 year, it can still be useful.
Okay, that's very nice. What if you don't take? Is there any side effects, doctor, or it is compulsory to take?
No. If you don't take, your say the second booster will improve the ability of the body to fight back. That will create more memory cells, which can identify. So there are more marshals circulating around in your blood to looking out for a COVID enemy.
Okay, right? That's good.
So if you take only one, this concentration may come down to a level. Maybe after 6 months, you may not have enough memory cells to recognize the COVID which comes in.
Correct. Thanks, doctor. We have some request to share the video. Yes, the video would be uploaded post the recording. It will be there on YouTube. We will share the link to all the members. One more question is Sputnik single dose or double dose vaccination? In many media reports, it is a single dose is sufficient. Your take, doctor, on this?
No, Sputnik is studied with 2 doses. So there are 2 things. One is what the manufacturers say is based on what they did the trial. Right? So trial always, sometimes trial says 100 milligram is the best dose, because that is the dose which they studied for any disease. But when it comes to practice, most of the doctors realize that 50 milligrams seem to be as good. Then we will use 50 milligram rather than 100 milligram. Like this, people are improvising while on field due to various reasons. One reason is there is some data to say that giving a longer interval it seems to give a much robust protective adaptive immune response or a B cell memory response. So that is why the Covishield is being little stretched. And also due to availability. If availability is not a problem, I think government would have finished in 4-week schedule only for everybody. Because of availability, they are looking at all these things and improvising. Sputnik is also studied 2 doses. And dose 1 and dose 2, about 4 weeks. So even 1 dose will give you some protection, but giving a second dose definitely increase the level of immunity, so that your protective like somebody says, 80% protection.
Correct.
So 80 protection, 90% protection is after 2 doses. With 1 dose, it will be maybe 60%.
Right. Thanks, doctor. I think most of the questions we have on the vaccination, I think doctor has answered those queries on the gap between the vaccination. We have one more question on how about 2DG drug for COVID-19 by our DRDO?
I'm not sure. It's recently, I think government has approved it.
Right.
It is a drug which it was designed to treat some cancers. And theoretically, it might help. But at this moment, we don't have an experience. Nobody has used it so far to tell anything about it. Probably people will start using it from now onwards. And we may get some more information maybe in a month or two.
Right. Thanks, doctor. One more question we have: as all vaccines are approved under EUA, emergency use of authorization, and reports that these vaccination trials are not successful, which is claimed by many leading doctors like Sherry, Andrew Kaufman, and many which are not at all discussed by mainstream media at all. Other things, this infection does not have a major kill rate and survival rate is more than 99%. Any update and clarity, doctor, from your side?
Yeah, say this again. There are always people who look at the literature in a two different way.
Correct.
So this is what the doctors you are quoting. That is for a scientific debate. Scientific debate to see whether whether is it worth on a long tail basis, whether it gives enough protection or not.
Right.
But this is emergency situation. See, in a peace situation, the government behaves in a different way. In a war situation, in a different way. So at this moment, it's a war situation. No drug will get an approval without very rigorous scientific studies. Now we got vaccines getting approved with very minimum studies. So that is because of the war-like situation. So we have to hope that there could be some loopholes, there could be some issues which will come to know later. But at this moment, at this point of moment, the science seems to be the best solution for it.
Thanks, doctor. I think we have one quite technical question. COVID antibody IgG CLIA 14.13 index. COVID antibody total ELISA is 5.34. This is the antibody value for 10 days back. Can vaccination be delayed based on these values?
No. See, this antibody means you have developed some antibodies with the first vaccine. I assume that they had a vaccine and looking at something called COVID spike protein antibody. That's what they check. If you have got an antibody level, that means your body has recognized the vaccine and it is making antibodies. If you have a very robust antibodies, you can push it to now in anywhere between 4 to 16 weeks, you can take the vaccine. Even if you take little later, it is okay. Right. But if you have a very low titer antibodies or no antibodies, then you have to take it quickly.
Correct. Okay, we have one question again on the gap of the vaccine. When India increased the gap between the doses from 6 to 8 weeks to 12 to 18 weeks, UK decreased the gap between two doses back to 6 to 8 weeks. Any medical reason specific, doctor?
No, medical reasons, there is no reason because UK wants to finish it up fast and open fast.
Right.
And they have, being a small country, they can do it. They don't want to keep on making the weight. They they give vaccinate everybody, 100%, make it maybe 80%, 90%, except the kids. Vaccinate every adult and open up. That is their model. In our country, we go by the other aspect of science. Okay, up to 16 weeks, it still mounts a good response, and we have shortage. So we are using that strategy.
Right.
So it is same information. You use it in a different place in a different way, different place in a different way.
Thanks, doctor. Is one more personal question I think we have: is vaccine safe for a person undergoing chemotherapy or just finished a chemotherapy? Your take on this, doctor?
Yeah, chemotherapy depends on what kind of a chemotherapy. Can be suppress the immune system, and your vaccine efficacy, it is safe to take, but efficacy may be a problem. You may not mount an adequate immune response. So if you are finishing the chemotherapy, better to take it after each drug has got some time for it works. Say one drug will act for 15 days, another drug's effect will be for a month. So you can take the vaccine at the end of the effective period of the drug. So you can ask your oncologist, they will be able to tell which is the best time to take the vaccine. Taking vaccine per se is not a problem. Only whether you mount an adequate response is a problem.
Okay. Thanks, doctor. One more question. What is your view on taking ivermectin tablet?
Ivermectin.
Ivermectin tablet.
See, if you look at the pure scientific studies, none of the drugs which we are using now, doxycycline, azithromycin, ivermectin, if you and I get a disease, our BBMP fellows will give you a kit. The kit contains these medications. These medications have some theoretical reason why they are being given, because they are shown to reduce the uptake of virus into the cells
Right.
in experimental animal models.
Right.
But when they have used it in patients in a large scale trials, most of the trials have been negative.
Right.
Some trials have shown some success in Bangladesh, not very well done trials. So at this moment, there is no solid evidence that you taking it makes any difference.
Okay.
Makes any difference. And but patients want to take something, and the doctors are have to be seen giving something. So they are all doing this. Most of the time is probably it gives us some kind of confidence that I'm taking something, I'll get better. That confidence helps them to get better.
Correct. Correct.
If I'm not taking anything, something will happen, that will be there in our mind. That will pull you down.
Yes.
So I've taken my medicine, doctor has given medicine, I'm fine, I'm bindas. So they're more likely to get better. So it serves that purpose at least, but scientifically it is plus or minus.
Okay. Okay. Thanks, doctor. I think one more question we have is alcohol. I think you've touched on that, to prevent alcohol. Is alcohol prohibited during 2 vaccination dose and after?
See, alcohol question, initially when the vaccinators say that the alcohol should be avoided for 1 or 2 weeks after the vaccination. But a lot of people have clarified that alcohol doesn't seem to have a big effect, but large amount of alcohol, see, if you take more than a peg of alcohol or 2-3 pegs, so the amount required to make you feel drunk, that can suppress the immunity, may reduce the efficacy of your robust antibody response. So you take a vaccine today and take one quarter every day, then probably you may not mount an adequate immune response. So that is one solid reason. But if you want to enjoy a small glass of wine, it should be okay, I guess.
Okay, just to celebrate we have taken the vaccination, it's still okay.
Little sip,
Okay.
little bit.
Okay, that's good. I think just on that same line, we have another question. Immediately exercising after taking vaccination. So we take a vaccination, we answered about alcohol. After vaccination, someone wants to exercise.
Yes.
Your take, doctor, on that?
Gentle exercises. Do the exercise which you are always doing. If you are walking 4 rounds around your apartments, keep doing it. You can do it after the vaccination. If you feel tired, feel unwell, probably take rest for a day or 2, then you can restart. But I would not recommend very vigorous exercises, because very vigorous exercises also can reduce the immunity, make you feel a little unwell. Again, if that period lasts, if you do it daily, then theoretically their antibody response may be slightly blunted. The immune protective response will be slightly blunted.
Right. And just to touch upon this exercise, doctor, like any kind of good exercise, is it cardio, strength training, breathing, or yoga, which is recommended, doctor, for all of us, so that we can kind of follow
you
that?
Have to have a mix. Exercise is always a mix.
Right.
So you need to have some stamina building exercises like walking, swimming, cycling, dancing, whatever you like, depending upon your interest.
Okay.
In addition to that, yoga is slightly different. It's considered as a moving meditation. It gives you some focus, and you have to stay in a position. You have to do this posture. So your focus is also mentally also you are doing something. That has got a different benefit. Then strengthening exercises using a resistant bands or a little bit of weights, that builds a muscle. That also has got a very useful effect for preventing diabetes, etc. So at least 2 days a week, some weight training. 5 days a week, cardio training, and yoga whenever you want in between. Yoga kind of medicine.
Excellent. Thanks, doctor. I think one more question we have. I am having fear to go to hospital due to the crowd and seeing patients. How to take care of old age parents? I think quite personal question, but yeah.
Online consultations,
yeah,
whenever it's possible.
Yes.
And if the doctor feels that the patient is ill, sick enough then you have to go to the hospital, of course, with the proper precautions.
Right. I think one more question. I think it's the current point what we see in news. Someone is asking, can you throw some light on the fungus issue? I think the black fungus, what we heard on the oxygen cylinder. Can you throw some light on that, doctor?
So it's unexpected complication because of COVID and its treatment.
Right.
See, it is seen in people who require oxygen, who are in a hospital, sick, going up to the ventilator. That kind of a patients, when they recover, they seem to get it.
Right.
One reason could be COVID itself is probably causing certain damage to the mucosal tissue in the sinuses, and
Right.
another risk could be you are given a lot of antibiotics and other stuff. If you
Right.
give a lot of antibiotics, sometimes if you are carrying certain fungus in the nasal cavity, our body's natural protective immune system can prevent them from growing.
Okay.
See, all of us have something called candidial infection, candidial bacteria in the mouth and the genital region all the time. But if you
Okay.
become a diabetic, you start getting itching there, you get some white patches.
Correct.
So because that these guys can grow. So normal commensals will prevent it from growing. So fungal infection might be growing in these people because of the antibiotics, because antibiotic kills the good bacteria, cannot kill this fungus, and fungus can grow. And
Right.
third is the steroid and immunosuppressives, which are used to make the patients better, because see, the virus doesn't kill. It is body's immune response to the virus causes collateral damage and we die. So
Okay.
to reduce that there is a overactive immune response, which is a cause for this COVID pneumonia and COVID serious cytokine storm. That's what people say.
Right.
So people use immunosuppressive, steroid and immunosuppressive. That also can sometimes facilitate this fungus to grow.
Right.
And the last but not the least is probably the oxygen thing which is going on, the water they use, the tubes getting contaminated. All these things can contribute to this fungal infection. It's extremely rare, but it's seen, definitely seen. And also, I think sometimes steroids are over jealously used
Okay.
because doctors at the moment the oxygen is down, that a lot of steroid is given.
Correct.
That can have a good effect and sometimes can have a bad effect.
Thanks, doctor. I think we have a lot of messages appreciating the presentation and information. I think wonderful.
Thank you.
One more questions on the CT scan. CT scan values is given in two different ways. One 10 by 25 and 14 by 40.
See, CT scan generally gives you the probably different systems may be using different values. So that I'm not 100% sure. I'm not a radiologist to comment on that.
Right.
But higher the value, say if it is 20 out of 25, that means the more area of lung is affected.
Right.
8 out of 25 means less area of lung is affected.
Right.
So you should not get a CT scan very reflexively. If you are feeling good, don't take a CT scan. Let the doctors decide to do a CT scan. If you are feeling breathless, saturation is coming down, if you get fever at the 8th day, 9th day, that is the time when the cytokine storm happens. Or if you feel very unwell from the day one, then probably you will be in the hospital anyway. Then they will take. So that is easy to interpret, because CT scan also carries some radiation hazard, because it is equal to at least 30-40, maybe more X-rays. So every time you expose yourself to radiation, you slightly increase the risk of cancer in future.
Okay.
So limit the number of X-rays, unless if you have a fracture, then the doctors will do X-ray.
Correct.
But don't go and do every year annually. I'll do an X-ray of chest pain and see whether the lungs are okay or not. That is not a good idea. CT scan, if you are doing well, because some auntie told that you have to get a CT scan, don't go and get a CT scan, because you are exposing unnecessarily to a procedure which carries some potential future risk. It adds. So cancer is always additive.
Right.
I am born with a gene which can help predispose me for a cancer. I smoke, and I also work in an industry where there's a lot of dust, maybe aluminum industry, and take lots of CT scan for some injuries.
Right.
Then I'll get lung cancer faster. If I have not done anything else, only the gene, I'll get the same lung cancer when I'm 95. Doesn't matter, anyway, time to go. But if I do all these things, probably I'll get it at 45 and may go early. So that is the difference. So do it only if it's absolutely required. Where if you have a breathing difficulties, their saturation is down, doctors have to do it to know what's happening. But if you are feeling really well, then there's no point in doing a CT scan to check how it is.
Thanks, doctor. I think one more question on the vaccine. Can kidney transplant patient take the vaccine?
Yes, they can, but they may not, as I told you before, because they are on immunosuppressive medications, they may
Right.
not mount very robust immune response. They may require maybe few more, rather than 2 may not be enough for them. They may require third dose and maybe a booster again
Right.
to get adequate response.
Thanks, doctor. I think as you showed in your presentation earlier, the myth was not many were going to get vaccinated. Now it is kind of got turned. It's totally turned on. All are like eagerly waiting to get the first dose of vaccination.
Yes.
So the second question is revolving around that. For what about young adults 18 to 44 who are not vaccinated but infected by COVID? When should they get their first dose?
Whenever it is available, at least after 2 weeks, 2 months after the vaccine, COVID infection.
Okay.
And whenever it is available.
Okay. Again, revolving around the vaccination, dialysis patient who has both the doses, is it safe to take?
Yes, it's safe to take.
Okay. Thanks, doctor. I think again, a lot of appreciation on the webinar and information. Again, thanks for that. Again, I think again revolving around vaccination with cancer. I think we answered in the earlier same question. Exercise, again, not very high exercise. Normal exercise is good. If I get fever after vaccination, does it mean my immune system is low? I think, yeah, quite a nice, good question.
No. It doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean that. Actually, if you get a little bit of fever after the vaccine, that is one indirect way of telling that vaccine is working.
Okay, so it's a good thing. So you have to be kind of happy.
In a way, good thing. At least something is doing.
Okay.
So if it is doing something, I've never felt it anything, doctor. I don't even have a pain. I don't have fever. That fellow may not be mounting an adequate immune response compared to people who have a lot of pain, they will have a much more robust response.
Right,
so they get what by vaccine we are trying to mimic a mild infection. We are creating a milder infection to prevent a bigger infection from happening. So you will develop some symptoms which look like COVID, but it's not COVID.
Right. I think, yeah, doctor, I think we could, I just went to the last question. I think we have wrapped it up. I think a lot of messages on the appreciating. Again, I would like to thank on behalf of ISHRE and all the participants to spare your. I think we have got touched almost 2 hours. I think, sorry for taking off the lot of time from you, doctor, but I think wonderful session. I think we are close to 120 participants. Excellent session. We really liked it and appreciate from heartfelt. Thank you. Before we close, I would also request ISHRE Bangalore Chapter President, Mr. Ajay, to share a few words before we wrap up the session.
Yes.
Mukund, I think we are not able to hear Ajay.
Never mind. So I think maybe this thing.
No problem.
As Dr. Sir, as Sandeep said, thanks for taking time out and speaking to us and listening to all our patient questions. Actually, sir, in our line, air conditioning engineers, we are very sensitive to people who ask questions to us. We say we know everything, and we actually, as industry, we know quite a bit about our line, and we are very impatient when it comes to when people ask us, especially clients. We say, "What do you know better, sir? We know nothing." So on that note, thank you so much, sir. It really was a breath of fresh air to hear you speak so very clearly and to the point about what's allowed, what's not. I think it has cleared a lot of doubts that we have. And once again, thanks to all the participants for taking time and coming. I know it's a very sensitive topic. So all in all, I think we should take sir's advice and get vaccinated at the first chance that we get. That's pretty much about it, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Sandeep,
special thanks to Mukund and a special thanks to our doctor, Mr. Dharmanand, and the youth team, entire youth team, Sandeep as well, who have organized a very good, thoughtful thing which we have done today. I hope that this, even if this helps some few of them, would be very great. Thank you for coming, sir.
Thanks, doctor. Thanks on behalf of ISHRE. Thanks for your time, and I think wonderful session. Let's all be positive, but not COVID positive. I think with that note, let's wrap up the session. Bye, everyone.
Good. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
My pleasure
Bye-bye.
as well.
Thank you, Doctor.